Hey, this is Christian Buckley, Microsoft Regional Director and Office Apps and Services MVP, and I'm talking today with Omar. Hey, great to see you, and thanks for taking the time to talk.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to see you. Obviously, love chatting about what we're up to.
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself first,
Yeah,
who you are and
sure.
your role there?
Yeah, my name is Omar Shahine, and I have the privilege of leading the program management team for OneDrive and SharePoint in Microsoft 365. I also have the good fortune of working for Jeff Teeper, um, who's an incredible leader and has been working on SharePoint his entire career. Many of the people in the community know and love Jeff, so it's been really amazing over the last couple of years just leading the product development for these two incredible products that are near and dear to a lot of our customers and fans and MVPs and members of our community.
Well, I know most people don't know that your background. I mean, you've been with Microsoft for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
you were. Did you start with Hotmail, or where was the beginning of your Microsoft career?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I graduated from college, I I was actually pre-medical biology major and didn't make it into med school, but was a computer hobbyist my whole life. I grew up with Apples and Macintosh computers, and I found my dream job at Microsoft in Silicon Valley. So I joined full-time in 1999 as a program manager. I worked on a variety of different products for the Macintosh. Um, and over the course of a couple of years doing that, had obviously some really amazing experiences. Um, really, Microsoft builds fantastic products for Mac, for iOS now, for Android. And so I started working on Hotmail the month after Gmail launched. So it was an incredibly opportune time to try and reinvigorate Hotmail as a mail service. Hotmail was the first web-based email service that reached critical mass, and we got to transform it over the course of 5 years. From there, I got married, had my daughter. My wife is a physician, and when she matriculated from her program in the Bay Area, we looked for a job in Redmond. I transferred up to Redmond in Seattle, Seattle in Washington, and started working on OneDrive. It wasn't called OneDrive then. It was called SkyDrive, and even before it was called SkyDrive, it was called many other things. But I had this once in a lifetime opportunity to really center the strategy for OneDrive as a solution for anywhere access that was cross-device, which was really brave for Microsoft to be doing at that time. We were still very much all about Windows. Um, and so I spent, the last 10 years working on content, OneDrive being a key part of that, but also SharePoint. The OneDrive and SharePoint team came together in 2014 or 15, and it's been an amazing ride. Modernizing SharePoint, launching new products and experiences, and then bringing OneDrive to the market as sort of the modern way to store your files and collaborate. And so that's a bit of my background and sort of how I grew up in this amazing company.
Well, it's interesting, with all the various the cloud storage solutions that are out there. There are dozens of them out there. When it comes down to it, you have that common need, which at one time it was this nice add-in, that some
Hmm.
people use those services. We don't even think about it now. It's used
Yeah.
ubiquitous into that experience. But I have to say that one of the most important changes, and it was dramatic, was making that the consistent experiences between OneDrive, which became a superior experience, before the integrations, the cross workload integrations, but consistent look and feel and behaviors of features between SharePoint, OneDrive, and Office applications and moving in between those.
Hmm.
So you were involved in all that effort, and
Yeah. One of the probably one of the most challenging projects I helped lead a couple years ago was around the sharing experience. I think that might be a great example of like
yeah,
how we brought together um, and worked in a very new way for Microsoft. So historically, a lot of people remember, like, classic thing for Microsoft was Microsoft shipped its org teams. This team over here and this team over there independently thought about things, came up with ideas, shipped them, and then the customer was left to figure out, the differences. Well, our sharing experiences for files in the cloud was complicated, inconsistent, hard to use, especially when you looked at our competition. And so I partner really closely with Tyler Rasmussen, who's one of the incredible design leaders in our team. And we came up with a multi-year, plan for basically how we were going to move to a shared control approach. So the share dialogue that people probably are very used to at this point is actually a web control. And it's a web control that runs obviously on our websites, but runs in Windows, Office for Windows, Office for the Mac, Office on iOS, Office on Android, Outlook, obviously all the OneDrive and SharePoint applications. And it's great because it means all the features work the same. The training companies produce for their employees, is going to be consistent across all these endpoints. And then the policy and compliance features that companies tend to configure and in many cases mandate for their employees is also going to work, in a very consistent, coherent way. And it was a place too where we really tailored our design language. So, when a customer uses an iOS app and then a customer uses a Windows app, they kind of expect the paradigms of those experiences and ecosystems to sort of map to their mental models. And so we did a lot of work to make sure that even though we had these web-based controls, that the buttons, the fonts, the text, the layout, all felt and appeared sort of like it belonged in that environment. And so that was something that honestly was really important in order to make sure our customers were successful using our product in the cloud, because frankly, if we didn't, they would just go back to using email attachments or file shares, things that were just easier and more familiar.
Given that you run the program management side of it, I mean, how complex is that to manage building that consistent experience across those different products and areas? I mean, historically, Microsoft internal product teams, didn't always communicate on those kinds of things. And it seemed to happen very quickly that came together and
Yeah.
was resolved. I'm sure there was a lot of effort happening behind the
Yeah.
scenes.
Well, I would say like it was a cultural change. Like it wasn't about getting different people. We have the same people in many cases. It was about learning to work differently. One of Microsoft's approaches to how we talk about employee performance is centered around how you as an individual leverage the work of others and build on their work, and then how you contribute, your ideas and your implementations, your code, your designs to others. So it really emphasizes this working across the company to build a set of experiences, Microsoft experiences, as opposed to individual product experiences. And it's very easy to justify things in the context of an individual product. The harder thing to do actually is to work across different teams to come up with shared approach, shared understanding of customer needs, shared design language. So I would say it was partly a focus on culture, and then also a focus on empowering design. Our design community is incredible. There's a small number of designers relative to program managers in the company. And as a result, they can work together very effectively to bridge, what ends up being a lot of program managers in some cases. And so, we've also shifted a lot of our approach to drive more ownership and accountability of the product within the design organization. And I personally think that's helped us a lot, because they are experts at product design, product language, and we really have healthy partnerships with PM, so we can work together to drive some of those outcomes.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure you're well aware. I mean, like Apple, for example, has been design led for most of their existence, and I think that is becoming rather than a special case or certain organizations, it's become broadly accepted.
Yep.
And I think it's because you can have the most technically complete solution, whatever it is that you're building. Have all the features there, but if the user experience is not there, end users don't use it, you've got a perfect product that nobody uses.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And another thing is, performance and reliability. We don't often think about performance and reliability as part of the product design, product ethos, but we've studied this issue a lot over the last couple of years. And you used to think about these things in sort of isolation, but they're not. Like, you need to design the product up front to have the right performance characteristics, and you need to set goals that say, this experience should render in 300 milliseconds or less. This experience should render in a second or less. There's science that says what happens when your products do those things more slowly, or more, with less reliability, or even just designing for catastrophic failures. Like, we can't design for a world in which the cloud is up 100% of the time and every single component works. Even like my local network at home is unreliable. And so how does the software behave when that, the unreliable signal is introduced in the system? So I think that, engineering and design team have also really partnered effectively to drive world-class performance in our products, which is something we were not known for in the past. And so I think that's part of this as well, which is, just really, really important.
Well, looking at these great discussions, I've got half a dozen questions I could go down that direction. I do want to kind of turn to the announcements and things that your organization really focused on
Yep.
for Ignite. Kind of what were the highlights in your mind that
Yeah.
what kind of the standouts?
Well, Ignite is always an interesting time because, there are a lot of people that work in this team and across the company to contribute. And I personally get overwhelmed myself every single time we have a big conference, just with the volume of new product, new announcements, refinements, small features and big features. So it's always good to think about like what stands out. And every time I talk about what's new, it's easy to forget. There's just so much wonderful stuff depending on what you're interested in. But there are a couple things that I'd say stood out for me. The first is, if you love SharePoint and you use modern SharePoint and you have a hard time remembering all the sites that you go to, which is true for a lot of people, we built this new experience in the left side of the SharePoint site called the app bar. And we've been talking about this for years in the team, but Jeff really pushed us, and I think the design and PM team did a great job, and the engineering team too, because it's really performant, and it's sort of a way to get back to all the sites, to get to your news from any SharePoint site. So you no longer have to bookmark 15 things, or go to the browser and remember like, oh, what was that site, or go search for it. So I think the app bar is a wonderful customer-centric approach to making something that is currently kind of difficult and frustrating much easier. So that's one. With OneDrive, we're introducing this new feature called Add to OneDrive, or add a shortcut to your OneDrive. And that's really powerful because it means that if there are places of information in your organization that you care about, whether it's a Microsoft team or a SharePoint site, with a single click in the command bar, there's a new command called add this shortcut to my OneDrive. It'll basically place a folder in your OneDrive, which is really just a link to that location. And so it lets you place all of the content that matters to you, you want to get back to like really fast in your OneDrive. And the beauty is, once you do that, it automatically syncs. It shows up on your phone. And so no matter where you use OneDrive, your sort of mental model is, I just have to launch OneDrive and all the stuff that I want to find, again, is there for me. So I think that something customers have been asking for a long time, and we're really excited to deliver. We launched Microsoft Syntex, which is a key part of Project Cortex, which we've been talking about for a few years. And man, it's just so cool what companies will be able to do with taking unstructured data, paper-based forms, and create models so that can be automatically, information can be extracted from that content, and then use all these powerful capabilities in SharePoint, such as content types and metadata, to populate that information automatically using cognitive services. And then the beauty of that is, once you've done that, you can have Flow, Power Automate basically do things based on that data. So, we hope that customers will sort of think about all the manual money-saving opportunities that are out there for them to sort of start automating and utilizing.
And the search capabilities. It's funny. It's like everybody talks about, search is one of those things where it remains one of the top priorities for, especially if you have a portal and are going through and doing this kind of massive amounts of
Yep.
content ingestion and classification and
Yep.
all the metadata and all that stuff is then building that search experience. And it's kind of funny, like over the years having worked in SharePoint, like every time there's innovations in search. And I remember a customer saying, "It's like, well, we're having problems with search, and people are having seeing content that they shouldn't have access to." It's like, no, search is now working better and is
Yeah.
highlighting the fact that you have content that you've not properly managed and locked down. And
Yeah.
it just seems to go in leaps around that. And I think
Yeah.
there'll be a whole new resurgence in search this next year as people start
Yeah.
using these tools like Syntax.
Well, that's a good segue into what I was going to mention next, which is we have a lot of new features around governance. So Microsoft Information Protections with labels and classification, like really simplifying how you deploy your policies and governance using labels, like very simple metaphor for end users and administrators to think about. So labels helps you sort of deploy that governance to all the repositories in an organization so that you don't have any of those surprises because you can set rules around what can be discovered and what can be sort of surfaced in the index to end users. So I think that's another awesome feature that we hope a lot of companies will start to leverage. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about Microsoft. Um, List is an amazing asset and product, and I think we it's sort of the last big thing that we're modernizing in SharePoint on sort of the journey we started a couple years ago. But we didn't just modernize it; we really took an app-centric, app-first approach to Microsoft Lists because we think there are a lot of customers out there that can get value by creating lists and using it for tracking projects and then automating it and getting notified of changes. We have a wonderful new iOS application for lists. So, it's for me really exciting to take what we've done over the last couple of years and the learnings in the team and the culture of the company and sort of take all of that and apply it to what is a very mature part of the product, but really think about how to bring a lot more people into that product in a way that's sort of much more consumer first, consumer friendly from a design and approachability point of view with things like templates. So that's very, very exciting.
You have to say, I don't know if you've seen it. There's a great meme that's going around, kind of the Bart Simpson at the blackboard writing, Excel is
Yeah.
not a database. Excel is not a database. But there's this conversation going on about Excel, and back in the day, you had there's a lot of database based applications. I mean, certainly there was a big shift in a lot of
Access.
movement. So access before that, but I was going to say even outside of that, like you think of like Lotus Notes and a lot of the move of
Yeah.
users of Lotus Notes over to the Microsoft ecosystem was about access and Excel and SharePoint to
Yep.
be able to go and build these database based applications or
Yeah.
services that are out there. Lists fills this huge need
Yeah.
for those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's sort of no code development. And when you include things like Power Automate, and then the trigger, the sort of rules we have built in, like and conditional formatting, like it's magical what you can do with Power Automate. I have lists that post stuff in Teams and send emails and populate lists based on data from our corporate address book. So it's just like really, really cool. It is a very hot space right now in the industry, this sort of table-based programming. And it's funny, one of my first jobs when I was like in the 5th or 6th grade was using an app called FileMaker Pro on the Mac, which was basically the access of the Mac.
Right.
And I used it to make a Rolodex like for my dad's architectural firm. And like that's just how I learned to tinker and make things. And it's just for a lot of makers, I think it's an awesome, awesome product and very connected to the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. It's natively built into Teams. So if you have a team, you can make lists a tab, and it like is beautiful. It works just like a native Teams experience. So that's just an example, I think, of the awesome ingenuity and creativity that exists in the team, and how we're listening to customers and sort of helping them solve their problems.
Well, I know that it's there's a lot of announcements. Obviously, we've been talking with some of the sessions that we're recording and capturing about like the how important it is for everyone to go and read through the book of news just to
Mhm.
catch
Yeah,
up, especially cross workload,
yeah,
because there's things that are happening over in the Dynamics and Azure space that are
yeah.
relevant to people that are collaboration people. There's
That's right.
just so much that's going on across those things.
Yep.
Uh, that's always the question that everyone asks, how do we keep up with there's so much that's happening. And going and following the roadmap site, going to the book of news, of
Yeah.
course the Microsoft 365 blog, daily there's things that are happening. So
Yeah, it's kind of like keeping up with all the streaming services content out there. Like you're always hearing about great new shows. It's like I don't have time for a
right,
show, but there's so much amazing content. You're right. And so we're also open to feedback on how we can do a better job. It is something that we get feedback on, that like just keeping up with the new is hard, and then deploying and getting adoption of the things that even shipped 6 months ago. So we definitely hear that feedback. I think the MVP community is an amazing part of helping us get out the word and amplify and also get feedback too. So I think the fact that we have such a vibrant community is part of what makes this whole thing special.
well, you can't do any kind of session for an event, even this ESPC 20 online, without saying, that's great feedback. So I think there'll be a drinking game underway uh, around that. But look, I mean, I even have some ideas. I'd love to see. I just did this and mentioned this in another session. I would love to see the Book of News become, kind of the next version, like a dynamic, ongoing,
Yeah.
rolling. Maybe they expire after 6 months. So, because the problem with the roadmap still is like, is it there yet? Is it out
Yeah.
there? Is it officially announced? To
Yeah.
see just one rolling list of here's what's official, it's launched, it's out there. That list and the details with links to the supporting material is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
I hear
anyway,
you. Totally
yeah.
agree.
I know you'd be able to use it just as much as anybody on the outside. But well, Omar, really appreciate your time today
Yep.
and for participating. And for everybody that's watching on ESPC 20 online, enjoy the rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love ESPC, so have a great time.
Thanks.